5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, people of the world. Hello, and welcome to Marketing as a Foreign Language, episode 185. I'm Kellen Kautzman. You probably know me by now. Did you know that there are certain people on the planet that incarnate into a family that tends to move around a lot? Our guest today, Terry McDougall, was one such incarnation. You see, when we come to this planet, maybe we choose our parents, maybe we don't. We can have that conversation. But let's suppose for a second that we did. Terry chose to be in a family where she was going to see much of the United States. I want to say moving over 30, perhaps even 40 times in her youth. Her father worked for AT&T, I want to say, and he went from place to place to place. Now, you may say, Kellen, why is this relevant? It's relevant, of course, because our life experiences don't dictate, but they, of course, form who we become and why we are so good at what we are so good at. As you all know, I don't believe in coincidences. Today on the show, we have the incredible, the amazing Terry McDougall.
Hey, Kellen, how are you?
I am thrilled to be alive and happy that I'm drinking tea. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
So we're going to go all the way back, but before we do, right now you happen to be an executive and a career coach and author of Winning the Game of Work, Career Happiness and Success on Your Own Terms. But you obviously got to this point by navigating some pretty gnarly terrain. So we're going to start with said gnarly terrain. Was I wrong about anything I mentioned in the
No. I'd say the only thing that I would probably not say gnarly terrain, because if that's the only terrain you've ever known, you don't know it's gnarly. You're just chugging along like, okay, this is life, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. So, okay. So your father worked for AT&T. He was like moving all around. Your mother pregnant in high school?
Yeah, she got pregnant when she was 16 and had me 2 weeks before she turned 17. And she got married 6 months before that.
Yep, there you go. I have a long lost sister named Rebecca. My mom got pregnant in high school, and she gave up Rebecca for adoption through Catholic Charities, and so I am familiar with sort of that song and dance.
Yeah.
So, would you say that the home life was chaotic or good, or what was that? Was that like?
I'd say in early days, it was fine. I mean, even though we moved around a lot, our home, and when you're young, the most important thing is like what's in your home. And, at first it was just me, but I have 2 sisters that my parents had after me. And, my parents did a good job of, giving us what we needed in terms of like food and shelter and, occasional vacations here and there. And the stuff that you want as kids, toys and being able to play outside and all of that kind of stuff. The early childhood was okay. Like I was saying earlier, when you don't know any different, you don't really realize like, oh, I mean, I guess when I got into school and we were moving every year, I knew that I was the new kid, but you don't really at a young age, have the perspective to step back and say, I would be sad when we were moving, but I didn't really think like, what would my life be like if we lived in this town since I was born? Right. It's as I've gotten older that I look back and I start to think like the impact that this stuff had on me. Now, certainly things did get more chaotic as I got older because my parents actually ended up getting divorced when I was 12.
Sure.
And, things did get chaotic when it was just me and my sisters living with my mom. I think it's tough being a single parent, and there were some other mitigating circumstances there, which, maybe we can talk about that later, but
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing. The chutzpah, the soul of an individual, the words that they choose to say when you hire them for, say, executive coaching, extend from moments that we could refer to as the past, but they are obviously the present because that moment exists now. even though
Mhm.
we like to say, and we like to create distance between the past too. We say, oh, well, that was, when I was 12, as if
Mhm.
that's not the thought that's occurring in your head right now. It's
Mhm.
literally
Mhm.
the present.
Yeah.
There is only the present. Um, and so, okay, so AT&T, dad's working for that. You're moving around. Um, when you are in a corporate environment, do you feel like starting a new position is easier for you than it is for other people because you're like, easy?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I would not be able to do the same job for any length of time. I always wanted new things, and I still like new things. I'm
Right.
excited by new. I'm excited by starting things. And I've looked at colleagues who, have been in jobs for 20 years, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I would die. I would die." I can't. I'm just like really creative. I'm always looking for stimulation. I'm always looking for like, how do I, pull this and this in and make something new with them. Um,
What's
Very creative.
let me ask you this. So you have clients, obviously, coaching
Yeah.
clients, and they are struggling with something. That's why they're hiring you. What
Hmm.
are they? What's the deal? Like, why are they forking over their hard-earned money
Hmm.
for you to
Hmm.
sit across from them and talk to them?
Hmm. Well, the reason why they come to me, and this is what I say. These are the kind of people I work with. They're successful but not satisfied. They're high achievers. And what I mean by successful but not satisfied is that they are getting the results that they expect. They're paying a higher price than is required for that, and they don't see that they could pay less, right? So I'm helping people, like, what I see a lot with very high achievers is that they get what I would call addicted to external validation. So
Mhm.
they are constantly looking outside of themselves and saying, what does my boss expect? Oh my gosh, like this person gave me a funny, look in a meeting. That must mean they don't like what I'm doing. Or, they're very tuned into what's going on outside of them. And they're very willing to, forego their gratification. So put off gratification for that longer term success. And that's usually what got them successful in the first place, right? Like what does the teacher expect? I'm going to do that. I get an A, and then I get into a good college, and then I get good grades, and I get these, good job opportunities. At some point, what happens is that we lose connection with what we want. Like when we're kids, we're pretty tuned into that. We're pretty tuned into like, I want to stay out and play. I don't want to come in for dinner, mom. Right. But we start to learn that discipline is an important thing, and that we get rewarded for being disciplined. And then we become kind of addicted to that, and we don't just go with the flow, or we don't like tune into our inner wisdom and say, I'm gonna like check in with myself and see how do I feel about this. Right.
So, okay, would you work with someone who's the opposite of that? Someone
Someone who,
who's like, "I just can't get my life together. I'm not motivated. I can't." You know what I'm saying? 'Cause,
yeah.
this is the problem, one of the problems with capitalism, which
Mhm.
is you wanna get paid, right? Like,
Mhm.
you need to pay Terry McDougall because she
Mhm.
knows what she's doing, right? And so the
Yeah.
people who have the money are the
Yeah.
people that we're talking about, that
Yeah.
behave
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. I mean, I've volunteered at times, and done, there have been some programs that I've been involved in where they'll say, would you be willing to, donate a certain number of hours for mentoring or something like that? And I have done that. But you're right. I do want to get paid. And I spent a long time in the corporate world, and I'm bringing that perspective to the table in addition to knowing how to help people take productive action towards their goals. And I would rather work with somebody who's super driven and they're like driving too fast, and teach them how to slow down and, be more productive than, you know, move somebody who is sedentary off of, where they are. I have worked with some people that were like that. And sometimes there can be bigger issues than just channeling their energy. There could be issues where maybe they might be better served by going to a therapist.
Drug
Maybe the issues are,
addiction, their home is a mess, they're smoking
yeah,
too much, they're not eating a
sure.
vegetable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Vegetables.
honestly, I will tell you that as a coach, and especially when I was first starting my business, that it's hard sometimes to like stay in your lane, right? To recognize where is my talent best used, because as a coach, I'm empathetic and I want to help people and I want to help people be successful,
Oh, yeah.
but I can't pick them up and carry them across the finish line.
Dude,
They
I'm right there with you, Terry. But
Yeah.
back when I was a teacher, that was the most frustrating. There was nothing more frustrating than the fact that I couldn't fire a student. I
Yeah. Yeah.
wanted to fire certain students because they take up 80% of your time. The other students are clearly suffering. And because many times schools are glorified babysitting institutions, it's just too bad. So sad. It is what it is. Drove me crazy. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, I want to get into business because then if someone is not a good fit for the team, they don't have to be on the team. And so that's
Yes.
similar to what you're talking about. You're
Yes.
going, look, if motivation's your issue, go get a Tony Robbins course.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's only so much that I can do because the people that I'm working with are the ones that have to take the action. I can help them design a roadmap. I can help them get clear on what that goal is. I can walk along with them on their journey and sort of point out things to them that maybe they're not seeing so that they can, make better decisions going forward. But I cannot pick them up and carrying them there.
No, it drives me crazy.
Occasionally,
I can't do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've occasionally had people that have thought like, "Well, I wrote you a check. How come I'm not getting the results?" And, those are people that I'm like, "I think I'm gonna give you a refund because this is not what
I
coaching
wrote
is."
you a check. Why am I not getting results?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's because that's just the first step. That's the commitment. And
Yeah.
now
Well,
you've got to take the action. You've got to commit yourself to taking action.
yeah.
There
If
are
you're
going to be
listening to
things that
this,
are scary.
yeah, if you're listening to this and motivation's your issue, here's what you do. Number one, eat more vegetables. Number two, drink tea. Number three, motion before emotion. I don't care if you want to work out. It does not matter to me at all. I don't care if you think it's too hot outside to go for a run. I don't care if you think it's too cold. I don't care if any uncomfortable excuse, blah, 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 that your mind throws at you. You have to distance yourself from your mind. You have to go, I am not my mind. In the
True.
same way that you are not your heart, it's going to keep beating. You are not your lungs, you're going to keep breathing. Your mind is going to think at you a lot. It's going to think all sorts of thoughts and throw them at you. And if you listen to this monkey mind, then you're going to turn into exactly that, this sort of instant gratification, I don't feel like it nonsense. You have to get over the I don't feel like it. It's motion before emotion. So pick up the kettlebell instead of contemplating picking it up.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Let the energy go towards a productive action, not just, ruminating and worrying or,
Just do it.
whatever.
Okay, so you're cruising around. You're a little kiddo. Were you shy? Were you extroverted?
I was kind of shy, although I was, kind of competitive. Like I really liked to, play hard. If I was out on the playground or whatever, I was playing hard. But I wasn't somebody that was going to go up and be like, "Hey, you're going to be my best friend." I think that probably this kind of came from the moving around. That I knew that I was walking into a classroom that the other kids might have known each other already, and so I was sort of self-sufficient. I wasn't like going up to people and being like, "Hey, will you be my friend?" But people usually would come up to me and be like, "Hey, there's the new girl. I'm gonna become best friends with her." And I was pretty adaptable, right? I was just like, "Okay, we can be friends." Um, I do think that having to move into new situations all the time did give me a I don't know, I guess kind of a poise or self-confidence. I mean, I didn't feel like I needed to be the center of attention, but I also knew my own mind and I had to rely on myself and I felt confident doing that. I mean, I didn't have to look to other people to be like, what do they think? Because I didn't have that.
Right. Do you ever resent having a gypsy like childhood?
No, I don't at all. Sometimes I think, what would it be like, if I grew up? But when it's funny because we moved here to Chicago from North Carolina, and it's a more temperate climate there than Chicago. And when we moved here, there's a lot of people in Chicago dreaming of more temperate climates, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, like, why did you move here? And, what do you like better? And when you've lived in a lot of different places, the pros and cons of each, right? And I don't really think that you can say, like, well, this is better than this. You look at it and you're like, there are trade-offs, right? And I actually like the fact that I wouldn't say I'm a citizen of the world. I'm a citizen's a part of the United States. I've lived in a number of different places, but I'm glad and happy to have experienced all these places and to have that as part of sort of my, frame of reference. And I frankly feel like I would be totally bored if, like the last place that I lived where I went to high school was Milton, Delaware, and it was like probably the smallest, you know, like most isolated place that we ever lived. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, if I had grown up there, I mean, everybody like intermarried and stuff.
Ugh.
Um, yeah, I
Milton,
wouldn't,
Delaware. Shout
yeah,
out. Hashtag Milton.
it's a cute town. I mean, now it's funny because we moved there in the
You
70s,
gotta get a
and
lot of
now it's,
hateful comments from the people of
no, I
Milton.
mean, it was actually a good place to grow up at that time. And it was actually a shipbuilding town in like the 1800s. It's close to the beach. There were a lot of good things about it, but it was like sort of a farming community, and it was close to the beach, so that there wasn't a lot going on beyond like tourism and agriculture.
Yeah, I'm from Mandan, North Dakota, so I understand
Yeah,
not
you can
much
relate.
going
Yeah,
on. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so little Terry's doing her thing. People are coming up to her, making friends wherever she goes, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Um,
Hmm.
you get to about junior high, so let's pick up in junior high. What's going on in seventh, eighth grade?
Well, my parents got divorced
That's right,
when
when you
we
were 12.
we moved to we moved to Delaware because I think my mom got tired of all the moving around, and I think it was
Right.
having an impact on my parents' marriage. I didn't know this at the time, of course, I was a
Yeah.
kid, but
Right.
I've just heard the stories since then, and I think that my dad took this job with one of the baby bells of the telephone company. It was the Delaware Diamond State Telephone, because he wasn't going to have to move, but it required him to step back a little bit. So he was a little resentful.
Right.
But they weren't able to patch the marriage up. So they ended up getting divorced, and and then we separated households. The funny thing is we lived on the same street, but just a few blocks apart.
Yeah.
And but my parents didn't do a great job of like co-parenting. And they also didn't do a lot to acknowledge the pain that this caused me and my sisters. It was like they were on, like my mom's dating, my dad's dating, they're like Terry babysit. So I think the whole background was that, okay, I'm going through adolescence and my family is broken up, right? So
Right.
it was a confusing, weird time. I mean, it's just a confusing, weird time anyway in middle school and junior high school. Um, but it was, and I was really involved in school. I was good at school. I was on the softball team and on the hockey team, and like on student council and on the yearbook. I was like little miss, like involved in everything.
So
And that's
let me stop you there. So, okay,
uh
so would you peg yourself as a potential client for yourself?
oh yeah, yeah. I coach myself when I'm coaching other
You ever look
people,
in the mirror
and
and give yourself a high five?
I don't know.
Are you
I
like, "You got
actually,
this, Terry. You got
oh
this."
yeah, I mean, yes,
Oh,
yes,
positive
yes, yes. And
affirmation.
listen, I mean, I've processed a lot, right? I processed a lot, and I also think that part of my like high achiever or like desire to control or to move up, it was driven by my childhood. Like I had no agency, right? I couldn't say like, I like this community. I want to stay here. They were like, nope. The things I had control over were what was going on at school, right? And I dug that. I was like, I can pour my energy into this, right? And I get rewarded for this. If I'm going to concentrate, I'm going to like put a lot into my diorama for fourth grade, right?
I'm
I'm
dying.
like, oh, I got extra credit for that. Like, I was totally digging that, right? Because neither one of my parents is like super good with like emotional support, right? And so I was looking for like, where can I get the support? Where can I get the positive vibes from? And I was getting that from school. And it gave me like a channel to like pour my energy into, that I was getting something back from it. So I definitely have been an overachiever throughout my life. And so I also am one of those people that was like, hey, I'm like working hard and I'm doing all the right things. How come I'm not happy? I spent a long time trying to figure that out for myself. And I think I did sort of get to a certain point where I started getting insights. And when I left my last job, or when I was getting ready to leave my last job, I started blogging about a lot of the lessons that I learned. Some of them I learned by falling on my face. Some of them I learned by reading books. Some of them I learned from coaches, and some of them I learned from some good mentors that I had. And I'm somebody that likes to help people, right? And I don't want other people to, stub their toe or stumble in an area where I did. I want to share information so that other people can avoid some of the painful situations maybe I ran into. And so my blog, eventually somebody was like, oh, you have like 25,000 words with your 2 years of blogging. You're like almost to a book. So I actually decided to go ahead and use the blogs as kind of the seeds of my book. And it really was driven by, work is a game, and nobody ever tells you that.
Oh, I
You
love
just think like, you just show up and you're like, hey, I'm here,
let's pause on that. So
yeah.
work is a game. I would argue that we are literally avatars in a game. It's just a game. People are tripping about their own mortality, thinking that you are your body. You're not. You're not your body. Spoiler alert. And
you're not your title. You're not your paycheck. You're not your corner office.
Those things. You're not even your body, right?
Right.
You may not even be your personality. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and I mean, it's funny because I actually have an assessment that I do with people. And when I debrief the assessment, there's like one part of it that is called the big who statement. And the other part is, these are the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your full potential. And when I talk to people about the big who statement, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that does sound like me. But then they start thinking about all of their like negative coping mechanisms or their bad habits or whatever. And I'm like, no, the big who is who you are as a soul. This is like in your heart, who you are. And if you didn't have to deal with all the crap, this is how you would show up as like a being of light. And we learn all of these coping mechanisms based on stuff that we experience in life. And a lot of times, they don't serve us well. Maybe they served us well at one point.
This is the
we don't shift.
Problem so this is the thesis of my book, pretty much. So advertere is Latin. It means to turn towards. And first thing we do, it's where the word advertise comes from. So when we're babies, we advertise by crying. We get all our needs met. And you can't be 10 and crying like a baby.
Right.
So yeah, it worked when you were a little kiddo. Ain't gonna work now, right? You have to reassess, and you have to evolve and change as a human being. And you have to be sober to do that. Sober. So people are constantly trying to relive their childhood through drugs. They're trying to relive their childhood through relationships, and looking at who you actually are when you actually are is terrifying. It can be terrifying to
Yeah. Yeah.
take
I
a
mean,
sober
it's
look at who you are as a human being on planet Earth, and then realize that despite the fact that you may not even like it, you are loved by many, many people. And every time you hurt yourself, you're hurting
mhm.
them by extension.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're all connected on some level, and it's funny when you were saying earlier that you don't believe in coincidences.
Oh,
I don't either. And I am blown away time and again about how the right person comes into my life at the right time, or how there's like really interesting threads that I've done nothing to weave that just show up, right? And I'm like, okay, that's weird, right? The same
you're
name or the same.
Dude, in the same way that you learn a foreign language, you can look at the experiences of your life as a communication of, for lack of the better word, the divine. So if I'm
Mhm.
a designer and I'm designing a video game and I create the parameters so that these incredible things happen, then that's like a language into itself. And if you don't speak Chinese, 你不会说中文, it's just gibberish to you. But as you become more fluent in looking at it that way, yeah, you can start to see the incredible synchronicities and serendipities of life that appear like coincidences, but they are not.
No, they're not. And one of the things I think is super interesting, I've seen this myself and I've seen it plenty of times with clients, is that they'll say, why does this keep happening to me? Why do sometimes they'll, feel very much like the victim, like, why do I keep working for these bad bosses? And I'm like, if if it happens once, maybe it's just, bad luck or whatever. But if it keeps happening, what is the common denominator here, right? That's you. And there's something that you're doing or not doing that is causing a pattern to repeat. And, usually it does go back to something in childhood, that there was some trauma that is unresolved. And once people shine a light on that and they realize what it is, they stop shaming themselves and they start saying, okay, there's a part of me that hasn't grown up. There's a part of me that doesn't realize I'm 50 years old. There's a 6-year-old in there that is pulling all the strings. And the reason is because her needs aren't being met in the present. That something happened when she was 6 and she is using 6-year-old methods to try to get those needs met. And guess what? Like when you're 6, maybe laying on the floor and crying and, kicking your legs, and that might have worked, right? But when you're 50, that absolutely doesn't work. But yet we see people throwing adult tantrums all the time. I mean, look at all the Karens out there, right? Like, Karen, by the way, this isn't the way to deal with this, right? Like, bring your coping mechanisms up to what somebody at your current level with your current resources can use to deal with the situation as it is today.
Yeah, and I would just say, men, I'm talking to you. Here's an idea. Cry.
It's okay.
Cry, let it out, dude. Let it out, because
Yeah.
that stuff is poison. You hold on
Mhm.
to that your entire life. Man, it is still, I don't know if it's the same as it was 20, 30, 40, whatever, 100 years ago, but dude, I am telling you, it's your heart chakra. Okay. Take off your shoes, go walk around barefoot and cry. there's, my, there's my 2 cents for the day. All right, we are running low on time, and so I want to give no rush. I want to give Terry a chance to shamelessly, capitalistically pitch her services to you so that you know what's up. Terry, sell the fine folks.
Yeah, well, so if you want to learn more about me, you can go to my website, which is terrybmcdougall.com. There's excerpts from my book, lots of, videos and podcast links. And Kellen's will be out there as soon as it's out. And you can get linked in with me on LinkedIn. My handle there is Terry B. McDougall. I also have the book, Winning the Game of Work, Career Happiness and Success on Your Own Terms. That's available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble as a paperback and ebook. And then finally, if you're a marketing nerd like me and Callan are, and then you might be interested in my podcast, which is called Marketing Mambo, and you can find that at marketingmambo.net or any of the podcast directories.
Love it for it. I have to give you kudos for pronouncing it Barnes and Noble. One of my mom's biggest pet peeves, she worked there, was when folks would say Barnes and Nobles. Oh no, there's no S. There's no
Okay.
S. Noble. It's Noble. Nobles. Psh. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we hope to have Terry back on the show. As you all know, the format here. This is for me at a later date. We finished around junior high school.
Yeah.
Around there. So that'd be a good pick-off point. I mentioned this only so that I can quick check out, remember where I was for a future date. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the incredible Terry McDougall. And that is the show for today. As you all know, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, available also on iTunes, Spotify, and 10 other podcast platforms. Join us live to leave a comment in chat during the live show. And then, of course, after the fact, where most people find us, feel free to just swing by the Send It Rising YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the show, and we will see you next time.